kind of opened up the idea that they would need a patsy. And then
Bingo. That opens up the idea that they would need a patsy.
Conspiracy theories are entering a dangerous
Information is the oxygen of the democracy.
There's so much evidence out there that even if less than 1% is true, that would be enough to collapse the current paradigm and change the whole planet.
Asking Ian, did you see the Trigger Smart interview with John Aaron Bray? That's literally what we're about to watch. I just spent my whole morning watching their longer version, and I'm 1 hour of the way through it. And at a certain point, I was like, dude, we just got to watch this all together, because this is probably one of the most compelling and important theories that's come out so far. And I got to say, I was pretty dismissive of the exploding microphone theory pretty early on. And I think that came out of ignorance to the concept of shaped charges and to the intricate dynamics of how more than one version of an explosion could be happening here. And thank goodness for people like John Aaron Bray that stayed on it and really dug it open and are here now to explain it in great detail in a way that makes it make a lot more sense. And I know a lot of you guys have been saying it was the mic since day one. And for me, what really gets me thinking on this train of thought is the shirt. The shirt. We've had enough time now to explore enough theories, to talk about the bullets enough times, that the shirt needs to make sense. And ultimately, I don't think anyone, especially when Bray talks about the speed at which the shirt lifts up and the frames in which the shirt lifts up, and when you actually analyze how much time it took for the shirt to lift up, you have to have an explanation for that. And honestly, I don't know as a rifle round explains it. I would be very interested to hear Valhalla's take on it. The black stuff in the car is a big data point here for sure. Lastly are drones, but so Sam Parker is currently on X digging into drones and actually examining Frank Turek's phone screen during the event in extreme detail. And I think Sam Parker is onto something, that Frank Turek seemed to be watching surveillance footage or something on his phone. He definitely wasn't FaceTiming, and we're definitely not seeing reflections on his phone. And it's interesting. And I haven't gotten a chance to look at Sam Parker's latest piece of that expose. What are we talking about? We're talking about the exploding microphone theory, and we're going to watch a video from one of the best explanations I've seen so far about it. I've been very skeptical of the exploding microphone theory because obviously an explosion would explode in every direction and it would leave charring on his shirt. And obviously we would see an explosion if it happened and the microphone wouldn't stay on his shirt. Duh. So there was all these elements that I was dismissive of the exploding microphone theory because of a basic understanding of explosions without getting into depth about shaped charges and all the other types of things. We're going to spend probably an hour or so going through this exploding microphone theory and just talking about it. And we're going to watch Trigger Smart. Big shout out to Trigger Smart. If you're not already familiar, Trigger Smart on YouTube, give him a subscribe, give him a like, give him a share, because this guy's doing amazing work. He's been doing amazing work from the start. And it's good that we have objective investigators taking all different angles on this thing. A little bit of housekeeping here. They had some audio issues. And so the gal whose name I forget, her audio was not... John Aaron Bray, the guy that's going to come on and explain the theory, he wasn't able to hear her audio the whole time. So I assume that they've cut it in a way that it doesn't get in the way in this edit, but she's just hanging out and only her and these two guys can talk to each other, but she can't talk to the guest that's about to come on. So if there's some weird stuff about that, that's why. Let me get our audio.
Welcome,
straight.
John. Did you want to introduce yourself?
I'm John Bray, John Aaron Bray on X.
How's that audio
And
level
John
for
has
them?
been very in-depth covering the microphone theory, and he has a lot of data to back it up.
Cool.
He has some visuals, and it's basically been his day one theory. Did you want to tell us kind of like how you got into, like what made you kind of go this route? Not super in detail, but just kind of like a high level.
Well, immediately I saw the video and I thought it was AI because it just looked so strange to me. And then my background's in body armor. I developed the refurbishing program for the Army for their.
So, this dude's a nerd. He's a science nerd, and he develops body armor, which you'll see as his expertise is on display throughout the interview. You'll get a sense for like, oh, that's why this dude is so freaking smart and so nerdy, and he understands these various physics components. He understands ballistics components. He understands imaging and modeling components for all these things. And obviously, he's also drawing outside of his like direct expertise in this theory and analysis. But it becomes quite apparent that bro knows his shit.
IOTVs, OTVs. So I saw how his shirt deformed, and I was certain that he had body armor on. But, within the end of the day, it was pretty obvious they didn't. So I started to basically run analysis on it, and that led me to the microphone.
And yes, he is holding the exact same microphone as Charlie Kirk is wearing. That is correct. He's holding the same microphone that Charlie Kirk was holding on the day.
Thing that could really convince me is that he was shot in the chest. That's the from the physical,
They'll mention this later. I hope they have it in this edit. He mentions this in the interview later on that actually when you think back to the original reporting, there was reporting that his chest was caved in. There was. That's all gone out the window now. We never see or hear that anymore. But during the first few days, like right when it happened, there were some reports that were saying that his chest was caved in at the hospital. And we didn't know what the fuck that was about.
Evidence and the energetic kind of dispersion.
Sleeping?
That's the only thing that could make any sense to me.
Fair.
What about some people talking about a round coming in and hitting his necklace and bouncing up?
I just find that really unlikely. It's just the other.
If you've seen Jesse on Fire and Heavy Duty Country Dan's, if you've seen the new video of their rounds, it would just be another data point to let you know that no, the
folks,
bullet.
I am starting to get very confused.
The bullet could not have been stopped by a necklace. It couldn't have been deflected by a necklace. There's not a chance. Here's our boys, Heavy Duty Country and Jesse on Fire.
This is Jesse.
They make all types of short jokes.
Brother. Stop. No, this Jesse on.
Jesse, my little brother. They're both gangsters. Jesse's a beast. So check out where they shoot through the frickin' cinder blocks here.
Oh boy, that's a. Oh my Lord. Nice. Isn't it?
Just explodes shit. Completely explodes shit. Through 2 whole roasts of meat. Explodes a cinder block. Pushes the other cinder block off the table. No necklace is doing shit to that bullet, right? Okay?
It exploded.
Right? It exploded. Then they shoot through a metal.
That's a fucking direct hit.
They shoot a little steel plate this big.
That's a fucking direct hit.
Holy fuck that.
And when I first watched the video, I thought he missed, even though Jesse said he hit it. Here's the video. I thought he'd missed. Just because, like, I don't know. But then you can see the hole right there in the middle.
Fucking.
Straight through the plate. And that's a steel plate designed for shooting. It's designed to take rounds. So it's just not designed to take 30-06 rounds. So the necklace obviously did not deflect this bullet at all.
objects that are involved in the movement.
Dude, if that actually hit Charlie, it would have been a whole different scene. It would have been so fucked up. That would have been the most fucked up video on the internet. Oh my God. Dude, that would have been really messed up. Even more messed up than it was.
Just doesn't, the energy doesn't align to that sort of scenario. The whole reason I started to do the whole vector map pixel flow was to try to pinpoint where the bullet may have hit him in his bulletproof vest. But in the middle of kind of creating the code to run that, it became obvious that he didn't have a vest on. The pictures with, you could see his nipples, and then it was just, the back line of where he's hunched over in his seat. There's no way even a executive vest could be concealed to that point.
I even had reporting like in the days following that I had people telling me that Charlie had a special like top end military bulletproof vest that was designed to look like bare chest underneath his, so it was like shaped with like nipples and stuff so that it would be disguised and you wouldn't know he was wearing a vest. And I was like, dude, I don't know, man. I don't know, man. We definitely know he was not wearing a vest at this point. That's been confirmed left, right, and center. But, there was a lot of unknowns at the start. But there was a lot of people's perspectives that got kind of deflected by the vest, so to speak, by the concepts that we all kind of looked at the start. And I think that a lot of people's attention to the shirt sort of dissipated because we kind of wrapped it into this vest question. And then we never revisited the shirt quite so much. Because if you remember, we were only watching the original video footage online for like 3 or 4 days before the blanket went down and you weren't allowed to watch the raw footage anymore. And then people are posting on YouTube, and YouTube has restrictions. And so it's been a long time since most people have seen the original footage all the way through the shot. So I did pull up some of the original high quality footage that I had available here. I haven't looked through to see if I have a ton of different angles, but we might go through some of that footage frame by frame a little later. Not to watch the bloody part. Hopefully we'll avoid that, but to watch the shirt part, hopefully. We'll see. We'll see if we get there or not.
So then that left me just to run the code as I had it. And I immediately noticed that there was kind of a epicenter in the center upper sternum of his shirt. And that led me to kind of start to question the three main kind of energetic centers of the event, which is the shirt that pulled up to his face, basically almost to his cheek, the magnetic clasp that moved across his neck. And what I first thought was a lanyard or wire to like an earpiece flying over his head. But it wasn't even a day into the event that someone pointed out that he didn't have an earpiece on. That became pretty obvious. And then better quality video became available, and it was pretty obvious that it was his necklace that flew up and over his head, and it wasn't, a wire. So then I was left with three different things that kind of I had to figure out how to explain how they were obviously tied together, because they started movement at the same time, and they kind of moved in kind of opposite directions of each other. The shirt, pulling up on his face, and the magnetic clasp kind of moved opposite of each other at first, and then the magnetic clasp flows back across his chest as the shirt relaxes. And then the necklace was what puzzled me the most, because it's the most.
I really want John Bray to watch the footage from behind that Candace saw. I very much want him to watch that footage just to confirm things.
Energetic object of the event. It moved the quickest. It had the most amount of energy kind of displaced in it. And it was enough.
And real quick, before we get far away from this, I have his video queued up here so that we don't have to watch. This is on his X feed. And I have it paused at a point where it's in the gore, but we're not like watching the gore. And part of what he talks about that he'll talk about later, and you should go to his X feed and watch this on his X feed, because X doesn't have censorship in this regard, at least, so you can actually watch this whole video. But see this thing right here? He has this video that somewhat tracks this apparent object frame by frame, and it does seem to be a angular chunk falling in the blood flow, like kind of ahead of the blood flow, as though the blood had pushed it out. We're going to play just like 2 frames of it here, and you'll watch it go from here down to here, and just notice that this is not a liquid flow. This appears to be a solid something that is moving with the flow. I have it muted as well. Or I don't have it muted. Now I have it muted. Oh, that was so fast. Okay. See that? See that piece? Maybe it's a droplet, but the more the frames of this that you analyze, the more it looks like it has squared, cornered edges and seems to be a distinct physical object. I don't know if Twitch allows gore or not, but I'm also going to clip this onto YouTube, and I just want to maximize the possibility that other people can see it. And so I highly recommend that people go and follow John Bray, JONAARONBRAY on Twitter, and go watch this for yourself. He posted this video on December 4th. It's not super far down his timeline. He doesn't post excessively. And you could just search for the phrase, a distinct black rectangular object. And he even does approximate measurements based upon the size. And it looks weird. I might go and look for other frames of it off screen here for a second while he talks.
Enough energy to actually break the necklace. So then I refined the code to really hone in on those details. And my first runs, the red dots are mapping the epicenter frame to frame. So every frame, there's pixel movement. And wherever there was the most pixel movement in the frame, it maps it with a red dot. When there's a lot of movement going on, it can be random. But when you have a lot of quick movement, it's pretty accurate, especially when you have multiple angles. So between the 2 front angles that we had, I was able to basically pinpoint the epicenters around his sternum. And then I noticed that the magnetic clasp kind of followed that. So that led me to kind of investigate what the magnetic clasp was all about. And then I found the model of the microphone. And
then one of the first things that I know, he's not the most exciting speaker on the planet. That's not his job. He's a nerd. His job is to be really, really smart. And our job is to try to decode the really, really smart and make it accessible to lots of people. And one of the first things that was confusing to me is that had me questioning the microphone theory is that I know how these microphones work. I think I have one around here somewhere. They have a magnet that goes underneath or on the other side of the shirt. You can put it on the front or on the back. And then the magnet pins through the shirt. And it's like, they're not that strong. Like, they're strong, but they're not that strong. Obviously, it would just blow off. Do I have one? My little microphone must be somewhere else. That's all right. It's not essential at all. So I was trying to get around that, and he addresses that quite directly later. They ask him that question.
Then the pictures of them kind of mounting it on it.
And what we'll do is we'll speed it up a little bit.
In the past, how did he wear the microphone? And when he first got the mic, he wore it on the outside of his shirt. And then it slowly kind of evolved, and then they put it underneath his shirt. And that day, it's kind of like mounted in a peculiar way that it's almost like standing on its side, where it's kind of bulges his shirt out. It looks kind of uncomfortable, and it's at a 45-degree angle. And I kept getting peak maps right below that, like kind of 45 degrees, like a trajectory that matches what you would expect if the bottom of that microphone kind of blew out. So then I found a video of someone actually disassembling the mic, and then I saw where the battery was, and the battery was right in that area. So that led me to start investigate, like, what could this battery be modified somehow? And then,
so when you listen to these theories, don't just listen for like the theory itself. I'm always listening for the details of how they came to that conclusion, to back engineer their logical process to judge, is this a logical person? Have they adjusted for variables? Have they thought about how they might be incorrect? Have they double checked themselves? Have they, done all the due diligence required to make their thought process more trustworthy? And often that's not very entertaining to listen through, but it's critical for an actual process of inquiry in order to get down to the truth. And that's the kind of researcher you want doing this sort of thing.
It wasn't even a year ago before that event that the Grim pager or Grim beeper attacks, the Mossad pager attacks happened. And I studied those, and I realized that, those pagers were in circulation for over a decade before they were detonated. And the batteries went through airport scanners. They were completely functional that whole time.
That's the key. Completely functional.
Yeah, that really opened my mind to the fact that Charlie's microphone was the older model. He had those microphones for quite a while, and he's traveled all over for them. So there's ample opportunity for someone to get a hold of it, and you can see how quickly you can get the battery out of it. You don't need to solder anything. You can just pop it out and basically replace it with a loaded battery, and the user would never know. You could go on using it. It would have approximately 75% of the charge capacity, and it would take someone that would use it all the way to empty all the time to even notice that it changed. So that made it plausible. And then
can you imagine how fucking crazy it would have been, though, if Charlie had just gotten a little more paranoid and had checked the batteries on his electronics? That'd be crazy, dude. English is your second language, so it's quick. Here's what I'll do is I'll try turning on captions for you. I know it won't help a ton, but maybe it'll help a little bit.
And I started to study the injuries from the pager attacks, which the pagers themselves were alkaline batteries. They were round, AA style batteries. So they left black residue, but they didn't leave any burn.
Key point right here. Key point. 2 different kinds of battery packs leaving 2 different types of residue.
Burns, and they didn't really char the victims, and it was pretty directional.
Wait, so you're saying the ones in Lebanon did not leave charring?
Yeah, what they left was the alkaline battery was the insides of the alkaline battery, the black residue from the alkaline battery. The walkie-talkies that followed the day after, they had lithium batteries, and they didn't leave any charring or any residue. They were pretty.
See how what I'm hearing in the background here is that he studied. He didn't just look up a few news articles about the pager attacks. He went and actually looked at the individual instances and compared what type of charge was this one and that one, which type of battery was this one and that one, what's an image of each of these attacks and images of each of these attacks. And yeah, funny freeze frame of her. And I didn't realize that the lithium battery charges didn't leave any charring, because that was one of the main critiques I always had of the explosive theory, is that we would see evidence of an explosion. But between it being a shaped charge and built into the lithium ion battery pack like that, maybe we wouldn't actually.
Pretty much clean. So that's why I was like, well, that's bizarre, because immediately, like everyone else, you think explosion, you think it's going to be a lot of radial damage. There'll be charring and residue left. So that opened up to the possibility that it could be a completely clean burn. But then I was kind of perplexed, why would someone go through the effort of this and not have a means to cover it up, right? If they killed Charlie with a loaded microphone bomb, everyone would know who it is. So that kind of opened up the idea that they would need a patsy. And then
Bingo. That opens up the idea that they would need a patsy. Because the first thing you think when you think an exploding microphone is you think of exploding pagers. But there is precedent for technological advances like that being repurposed and retooled and reused. So sorry, I'm getting distracted over here by some of these planes. Probably nothing. Just keep my eyes out. I've got 2 different trackers running.
And the rifle kind of made sense to me, the weirdness and strangeness about it. But I put my mind in kind of the conspirators, right? If I wanted to pull this sort of event off, I would want the wound and the event to look like a rifle shot. And in my mind, immediately what I thought was it looked like a chest shot. So then I was like, what if this was designed to mimic a chest shot of a 30 off 6?
So let's talk about that really quick, because a lot of people are going to.
So I know a little bit more than you guys do about what Barron has and what Barron's talking about. And I'm not going to give any of his shit away. I'm not going to jump the shark on Barron's expose. But when it comes out, it's going to be explosive, so to speak. Let's just say that. And I think it's all going to fit very neatly into this emerging theory. I think there's a couple pieces that still need to fit into place that sort of don't exactly align. Maybe it's like old hangers on from other theories that have built into this that don't really actually fit into this kind of amalgamated version of what probably happened. But I think we're honing in on what happened here. And I think Barron holds some key pieces of evidence, and you're not going to want to miss. I don't know whether he's going to do it this week or next week. I don't know. But I admire that Barron takes his time to really run down all of his leads and be very thorough before he breaks things. But when he breaks that story, it's going to break everything wide open, I think. I think it's going to change the whole conversation. And he's hinted at it a lot. If you've been listening carefully, you can kind of put together what's going on there, especially last night. He dropped some major hints last night.
Say, like, what's your official explanation as to why the official narrative wouldn't work?
Well, it's because it's the order of events. So you when you watch the events unfold in slow.
I love that he has a totally different explanation for why the mainstream theory doesn't work. And his is just as obviously true as just saying like a 30-06 would blow his head off. But his is a completely separate and distinct analysis of why it wouldn't work, being the timing of the shirt and the things that raise up in different directions before the wound appears, before the cavitation happens. That is extremely compelling, and I can't believe that more of us didn't think to say that.
Slow motion, frame by frame. The necklace, the microphone movement, and the shirt all precede the appearance of the neck wound. And with a high velocity impact to the neck, the zone 2 of the neck in particular, you would have instantaneous effects, right? You would have atomized blood, you would have cavitation. There's no way that you would have, it's at 0.43 seconds delay from when the shirt first moves to when you see the neck wound even appear. And it's almost.
And remember, this guy works for the military refurbishment body armor programs. He's very familiar with the kind of things he's talking about here.
A whole second before blood appears out of the neck wound.
Yeah, that's the strangest part to me, is that delay.
So then I studied, the forensics of high velocity impacts, and there's so much, case studies on it and examples of people being shot in the neck in the exact same area, and nothing about it made sense. There's no high velocity blood, no blood atomization, and then the strangeness of the leaked autopsy reports, like them trying to say that the C1 was hit when the trajectory was almost impossible for that to happen, and then like it traveled down to the C6, and I just couldn't understand why they would go through efforts to try to explain that. But when I got
madness.
to kind of the aftermath, right? So once I thought I had a solid grasp on what caused the shirt to move, what caused the necklace to move, what caused his body to react in the way it did, the way his hands grasped together, his.
I think this is the last missing piece that needs to sort of be wrapped up into whatever this theory is that's emerging. Because I think that these guys do a good job of explaining why electrocution doesn't exactly make sense, and I'm sure they'll get to that in a moment here. And we do have the understanding that a base brainstem injury will cause the decorticate posturing response, the sort of like hands curling in. But without a high velocity impact of a rifle round, even with it, it's still not hitting the right part of his brainstem by my understanding. But without that bullet impact, it's like, what's causing Charlie's posturing as he dies? Is I don't know. We need some experts to talk about, like, if there's an injury to the heart, like what if this shape charge actually blew a hole in his chest straight through to his heart? Or what if there's some other device going on? Is it possible that that's just from severing the carotid artery? I don't believe so. So I don't know. I don't know how you square his posturing and the physical response we saw from his body when he got hit. But everything else is circling in on pretty.
His elbows lift up and his arms come in, and particularly his legs. If you look at his legs, his knees immediately come together, and he lifts himself out of the chair. And so that's indicating that he had mid-brain and brainstem damage. And then that made perfect sense to me. That's why they had to lean on the C1 damage, because that's the only way that you could have that sort of physical reaction from a ballistic impact. Outside of a headshot, it would have to be at the very base of the spine for a bullet to cause a physical reaction like that. So, it made me think that possibly the narrative was being crafted kind of on the fly. And so then I started questioning the neck.
The narrative was definitely being crafted on the fly. For sure.
Like the bleeding of the neck wound, the delayed bleeding of it, and the shape of it. And particularly the trajectory of the magnetic clasp, which basically tells you the trajectory of the whole microphone, right? They were connected together, and how they lined up perfectly with where the wound appeared. And then the wound had this strange, rectangular appearance and the delayed bleeding. If you look very closely, frame by frame, you can actually see the deformation of the flesh.
Acute reflex posturing? Acute reflex posturing. Refers to involuntary stereotyped motor responses that occur immediately following a traumatic brain injury. And then there's different types of acute reflex posturing, I presume, right? You're a doctor. Am I correct in my layman's understanding that acute reflex posturing is the categorical term, and then there's different types of acute reflex posturing, including decorticate and decerebrate? Right? Yeah. And those I would assume, would depend on where the injury exactly occurred, to what brain material, spinal material. Separating brainstem from spinal cord. Yes. Boom. Cool. The most recognized form is the fencing response. The unilateral extension of one arm and flexion of the contralateral arm. Like this, which you guys can't see. That's interesting. I've seen that actually in extreme sports, which is kind of dark to think about. Doesn't have to be above cortex. You were making coffee. What did you miss? Only some homies solving the fucking case. Pagers had been in play for a decade. Yeah. Your dad thinks the AJ we see now is a clone. Having lived in Austin and knowing his personal trainer and knowing his whole team, he's not a clone, but he has changed. Fencing response. Really quickly, let's just get a layman's understanding. Decorticate posturing versus decerebrate. Decorticate posture is characterized by arms flexing towards the body, clenched fists. In contrast, decerebrate posture involves the arms and legs fully extended, wrists and fingers curled. So we definitely did not see decerebrate posturing. Correct, doctors? We saw what looked a lot more like decorticate posturing, but obviously, right? Doctors that are in the chat, do you guys feel confident that it was for like 80% or 90%? Yes, that was decorticate posturing. Or is it the kind of thing where it's like it looked like it, but it's hard to say for sure because obviously decorticate? My layman understanding would be that it seemed pretty obvious that posturing was like very much a thing. But I always hesitate to... It was decorticate and you are a nurse practitioner. Thank you. I appreciate that expertise. 95% sure decorticate. Cool. And so decorticate would indicate injury to brainstem, not spinal cord, right? Spinal cord would be decerebrate, which would be sticking out your arms. Also happens in seizures. Good point. That's a good point. Miami me lo confirmo. Yeah. So yes, correct, Vendy. What we are then extrapolating is that it hit, in theory, something affected the brain stem or the brain, not the spine. Grand Mal, interesting. Hell, frijol. Does anyone have any sense, any of you doctors and nurses, do you have a sense of whether you can get decorticate posturing from electric shock or from seizure induction or from... Yeah, you have epilepsy and that's exactly what happens? Or just other brain aneurysms? That's interesting. Yeah, we're going to need some expert takes on camera because obviously I love you, chat, but we can't trust chat as a source. Chat is a fun way to kind of like guide the investigation for sure, though. Sorry, my computer keeps on changing the size of everything. Seizures for sure. Caused by the cyclomite explosive. But the thing is that the cyclomite explosive is down here in front is the idea. Yeah, watch anyone who's ever been tased. Yeah, exactly, right? Not a result of electrocution, J Love. I would argue that I've seen similar posturing in tasings, but I ain't no expert. But John is going to talk about the plant that exploded, and we might dig a little deeper into it.
Just a trajectory of the microphone, the direction it was traveling. So
a quick question that people are going to have is, are you saying that the microphone itself exploded, or are you saying that something exploded out of the microphone towards his neck?
I believe that the microphone was designed to replicate a 30-06 impact to the chest, and there was unforeseen shrapnel that came off of the microphone, either the battery or the magnetic clasp, that struck his neck that they didn't prepare for. And so when the very obvious neck wound became kind of the center point of the event, they had to shift the narrative from a chest shot to a single neck shot, and they had to explain the physical reactions that we all saw by the C1 impact and the vertebrae damage, when in reality I believe he probably had chest damage too. And if you remember, there was leaks from the hospital that described massive chest damage, as his chest was caved in.
Right.
And even some of the first reports of the autopsy, which the New York Times article even mentioned chest, but then it was redacted and it's changed later, and you can't find any mention of that again. But even the first witness that I saw from the crowd said that he was shot in the chest and blood came out from underneath his shirt. Yeah. So, I feel like that there was a scramble to cover up any chest wound because they only had a single rifle shot, and you can't have two different wounds with a single rifle shot. And I think that explains the strangeness at the hospital with the physicians and the surgeon not be able to go back in. And then, autopsies ordered overnight and then flying him out, and then the security footage from the hospital getting confiscated. It all just seemed kind of out of the ordinary and unnecessary, unless you had something to hide, like a very obvious chest wound. Right?
So just real quick, sorry to cut you off there. Some people are saying that he sounds nervous. Yeah, this is not what he does. He does not do podcasts. He does not do interviews regularly. So we're going to be giving him some grace because he is not doing this on a regular basis. So
and I would say that for anyone to hop on a live stream and completely, flesh out their entire very complicated theory of, amongst all these people online is a nerve-wracking thing. So John, I think you're knocking it out of the park. You're doing a great job.
Hey, chat, vote in the chat. Is it nerve-wracking or nerve-wracking? Because it's nerve-wracking, right? It's not nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking. It's racking, right? It's rack. Cool. I'm not the idiot here. I'm not saying she's an idiot either. We all have these little things. Candace is actually the queen of like saying the little thing a little differently, which I think is hilarious. Get racked, baby. Yeah, getting racked.
All right. So now some people are asking to have you explain this. So, and actually you said that you either wrote software or you use software for this. So who, I guess you want to walk people about, like, through the software piece of it, like how you came up with this kind of grid that shows where the pressure and the power and energy was?
Yeah. So I took the MIT Labs optical flow software, and I modified it to specifically look for epicenters frame to frame. So what it's doing is looking frame to frame to video and looking on how the pixels move. It's because his shirt has those freedom text across it, and his shirt's white, and then we have the black magnetic clasp on the shirt. It gives us a lot of vectors to track. So basically the software is looking at every frame and it's mapping the movement in between those frames. And then it's putting a red circle on the epicenter of those movements.
Does that make sense, chat? That it's tracking the pixel movements in the camera, in the footage, and the red dot is appearing wherever the single greatest point of movement happens. Interesting that right then it's right there. Don't know why.
And you can see the color mapping is showing you where the areas of the highest movement. So it kind of shows you the previous frame where the movement moved from the previous frame to the next frame.
Onion skin.
Yeah.
And Baron is drawing a lot of attention to this one underneath his armpit down here. And I know why. And when Baron shows that evidence, it's going to be wild.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so like in this one, is the red circle where the focus is? Or is that just...
The red circle is where the peak movement happened from the previous frame to that frame.
Okay,
and
so
you can see
moving across.
And you see the heat frame from where the text was. It's showing you the text was in the previous frame. It was there, and then you can see where the text on his shirt is now, where the shirt pulls up across his face.
Yeah.
So here you can actually tell that this piece of shirt is already reached its top height and is about to come down.
Okay, so quick question on this. So this is a separate theory that I'll probably ask you about, but the electrocution.
If it was actually a rifle round going through into the neck and then the shirt responding to that, you would think that it would be like bam, cavitation, and then airwave then pushes the shirt out. And the airwave pushing fabric would be fast, obviously, but like, bro.
Theory, he was saying that, he was trying to explain like the burn under his like chest nipple area, but in your stuff you're showing here, it's not that low, correct? It's higher up on his chest.
Yeah, and the other angle maps it slightly different, because the pixels are going to be different from different angles, but they're both in that general area.
Okay, so they're both kind of by the F of freedom?
Yeah, exactly. The shape charge theory basically is that it's not like a general basic explosive. It's not a radial force. It has a small charge and a cone, and it basically directs a high energy jet out of the cone. So it's made to penetrate armor. But you can use it on soft targets too, and it allows you to create a wound that's very similar to a rifle wound, where it leaves a deep wound channel, and it'll even leave copper fragmentation into the wound. So,
did you hear that? A shape charge is designed to leave a deep, directed wound path that would mimic very much a rifle round, and will even leave copper fragmentation in the wound sometimes. And this dude manufactures and repairs body armor. The squib stuff, Baron's going to bring the squib stuff back later. And again, maybe the theory sounds stupid to you, but you need a version of events that accounts for the movement of the shirt at that insane speed. At that insane speed. The shirt responded before anything else, basically.
What we're seeing the shirt moving is the overpressurization. So the pressure that didn't penetrate the flesh basically is escaping through the shirt, and that's what causes the shirt to balloon up and move so much. That the shirt that pulls up across his face on the opposite side of the microphone is actually from his necklace. The pendant on his necklace, the cross pendant, is pushed down, and then it can't go down anymore. So then it follows the kind of the path of the necklace and raises up across, and that's what lifts his shirt up across his face.
Okay, so you're saying the downward pressure of the explosion puts pressure down on the pendant, that stretches the necklace, that force builds up, and then it pops back up, and that's why you see it kind of goes vertically, like straight up in the air?
Yeah, if you can actually see one frame where the cross is peeking out next to his face, but it gets caught and the necklace breaks, so then the necklace slides out of the cross pendant, and the cross pendant falls back down, and that's why his shirt falls back down so quickly. And then immediately after that, you'll see the appearance of the wound on his neck.
Okay, so for this...
You see that part, the magnetic clasp goes on the backside, so that part that we're seeing right now, that he has a suction cup, is against Charlie's chest. And that's the batteries against his chest also. So if the shape charge was put anywhere, it's going to be put in that gold battery right there.
No.
See how he actually disassembled this specific wireless microphone, analyzed its specific components, its specific build, how it was on his shirt.
I think with the previous pager attacks and the cell phones, they just replaced a portion of the battery, correct?
Right. They basically took 20% of the cell and replaced it with the explosive.
Okay.
And I think that this theory is compelling. I'm not convinced 100%, just like Baron says. But I think it's compelling because one of the weirdest things about the wound and the blood is the slow flow of blood and the weird size of the wound. Zeb Boykin, right from the start, was pointing out, and he's a literal ballistics expert, and he was pointing out that entry wounds are not that big, that the wound is way too big to be an entry wound, even for a 30-06, which we know it can't be. And so then the very next point is, okay, we have questions. What actually causes a wound like that? And what actually causes bleeding like that? But also a little bit of decapitation.
They probably did with this. They just replaced it with a smaller cell battery, a slightly shorter battery, and then they put the shape charge in the end of the space that was left over.
And that would make it so it would still function. He could still live stream and everything with it, but obviously the battery wouldn't last as long.
Exactly.
Okay, now someone is asking you to explain how the pendant broke one more time, just so they can understand it.
Basically, the pendant, the necklace...
No, we're not saying that it's an exit wound and the entrance wound is on his chest. He'll get to explaining this. He believes that there is probably a wound on the chest, which is why they had to control the body so thoroughly, but that accidentally a piece of the microphone housing exploded off and probably nicked him in the neck and caused that wound on accident, and that was not intentional. So he'll explain in a little bit how they have a initial charge that was designed to lift it off of the chest, and then pow, it was supposed to then shoot him in the chest with it, so to speak. But he believes that because of the way the microphone was resting on Charlie's shirt, kind of at an angle, like with the shirt a little twisted, instead of rising it off the chest directly, he believes that it rose sort of at an angle and then exploded at a weird angle and caused a little bit of a piece to fly off and nick Charlie right here and cause that nick in his carotid artery and then the bleeding. That is my understanding of his theory.
Was moved by the force of the explosion, and then it crossed the path of the shake charge. So when the pendant was pushed down and it met the end of the slack of the necklace, and then it's like a pendulum, it swung up and started to come out the shirt, and that pulled the necklace across, and it ended up crossing that peak that we see in the middle of his chest, and that's what snapped the necklace. And then the momentum of the necklace forced it over his head. So that's why when we see the necklace fly up and over his head, it's broken. It's a single strand, 26 inches of necklace instead of being, a loop connected.
And we don't know at this point what the coroner's report said. I've seen some people asking about that, and I've tried to kind of interject a little bit too. I mean, that's part of the problem, you guys, is that we don't know exactly, what the coroner had to say, what the autopsy said, what the doctors, officially said. I mean, we're going off of third, fourth, fifth party information.
And if you're also taking into consideration things like,
oh, cool, it looks like they got our audio working at some point.
Now, Candace is saying that, Colvett never said what he said, or that what he said was made up and that the surgeon never said that. We're kind of getting to the point where can we believe anything that's been told so far?
No, we can't believe a single fucking thing that we've been told by TPUSA or anyone that works there. Not a single person. No way. We can't believe Turek saying that he found the necklace over top of his bag. We can't believe any reporting about the autopsy, anything about the spinal injuries, anything about the bullet fragmentation.
Yeah. So, like the fact that he had broken vertebrae, and like, is that true?
Or anything that Erica
says. Because if people are trying to make these other narratives fit that now. Like, well, if he was electrocuted, how do you account for the vertebrae? Do we even know the vertebrae are broken?
And so why the speculation? Because I think inquiring minds want to know. And there are a lot of us who just cannot stand to sit around and wait for, a year plus. And it just doesn't feel right. That's, at least I'll speak for myself in saying that I can't just sit around and.
What up, Cyclops? Welcome to the party. And by the way, guys, while we're talking about this, we are going to get to the explosives plant that manufactures these exact explosives just mysteriously blowing up 1 month after. That shit's suspicious as hell.
And twiddle my thumbs and wait. I've got to keep digging.
So the next movement, I guess. So say it explodes, it sends that the magnet in the mic start to go the direction of the, I guess the shape charge would knock it that way.
So a shape charge has to have a standoff. It has to create a jet before it can penetrate. It's not penetrating with brute force. It's actually, creating a high-speed jet that's basically turning anything it contacts into liquid.
No, we're not saying energy weapons. We're saying shaped explosives charges, which are very normal. They very much exist. This is not tinfoil that those exist. We've not seen them necessarily used in this way before, but no one had ever seen the pager attack until the pager attack happened either.
So it needs a 2 centimeter standoff. So they would have to design a primer charge that kind of forces the microphone away from his flesh before the shape charge goes off. And if you look at the particularly Cubs video, the highest resolution video, that's kind of to Charlie's right or left hand side, you can see that the microphone lifts up and kind of almost touches his face before it starts to make the trajectory across his body. And it's my belief that that's the primer charge creating the standoff space. And that primer charge is what causes the necklace to move. And then once the primary charge, the shape charge goes off, it actually snaps the necklace. And that's when you see it break loose and fly over his head. And that's when the trajectory of the microphones change from just kind of lifting up to his face to going across his body. And at that same time, we have the shirt coming down. So while we have the microphone going, the magnet clasp and the microphone going across his chest, we have the shirt falling down. And they kind of like at a certain point cross each other. And you kind of lose sight of the magnetic clasp. And then that's when the wound on his neck appears. So if you look at it frame to frame, there's no single frame where you can see both at the same time. You see the magnetic clasp, and then you don't see it, and then you see a wound on his neck. And I'm not 100% certain that it is the magnetic clasp. It could be the magnetic clasp or the battery. They're very similar shape, as you saw in the video before. They're both rectangular. But I am sure the trajectory of the microphone, and the trajectory matches perfectly with the appearance of the wound, and the microphone kind of snaps back. And you can just see kind of a bulge where it is, but you don't necessarily ever see the full magnetic clasp again. So it's the timing and the trajectory is what led me to believe that it was a blunt rectangular object from the microphone that causes the neck wound, combined with actual physical, traits of the wound itself. It's not a high velocity wound. That was a medium velocity wound. And that because of the delayed bleeding. And then also the deformation of the skin. It was just, the skin was flexed outwards. It wasn't like a cavitation from a high energy impact. and then the bleeding was so strange and delayed, and we can't show it.
And we're a little bit hamstrung by trying to discuss this on YouTube, which is a convenient accident, because YouTube won't let us show the actual gore of the actual wound in the actual moment. And so you kind of have to go back and take this theory and then reanalyze the original video for yourself in order to make the decision for yourself of whether this makes sense to you or not. But I'm going to try to get us a little bit of frame analysis without the gore here in a minute. But it is what it is.
Here, but I actually have code that has mapped the fluid dynamics of the blood, and I've been able to actually track the rectangular object falling out of his neck from 2 different angles. So not only do we have the trajectory matching the portion where the wound appears, but I also have a rectangular object, flat black object falling out of the wound from 2 different angles also. Either the magnetic clasp or the battery. It was something dense and rectangular.
Okay, so you don't think it was like shrapnel from the mic exploding?
That's what I mean. It's shrapnel from it, but the shrapnel was the dense object being the magnetic clasp or the battery itself.
Unintentional.
A lot of people are asking, like, how can the mic and the mic magnet go towards, like, anywhere? Shouldn't it just explode away from the body?
It's because it's a shaped charge. Imagine it's like a jet. So it's not explosive where it's a radial explosive, where it's exploding in all directions. This is an explosion that has a directed path. And so the only expansion comes out of that directed path, the cone. So it's like, like a rocket engine. When you launch a rocket engine, it just doesn't explode everywhere. It sends a directed path in one direction, and that causes a trajectory, and it follows that trajectory quickly.
So that would mean in this case, equal and opposite reaction. That would mean that the shape charge would have had to have been pointed down and away from him, correct? To push everything up towards him?
Right. And so the variable comes in is the primer.
Where would you go to find the unedited video, the original video? You would have had to have downloaded yourself back then. I learned that from this event, and now I'm going to download every video right away. I do have a bunch of original videos, but if you don't have them by now, it's kind of hard to trust anything you're downloading off the internet unless you get it directly from someone that you do trust. But by cross-referencing videos to other videos, you can get a little bit of a sense of which ones are original and which ones are not. This one is not, but it's nice because it is extremely high frame rate HD. And although I don't enjoy Jason Goodman all that much, I do trust him a little bit. And regardless, this angle is useful because it doesn't show the gore, so we can analyze it a little bit more. We're in a segment where Jason ultra slow-mo'd it, and so I can grab the slider bar and I can drag it between frames, 1 frame at a time. And you can see these are 3 separate frames. Okay? And he has it marked. This is a 60 frames per second video. 4K HDR. And when I drag, so this is before the impact, frame 1, frame 2. In frame 1, the shirt is already moving up. The necklace is already moving up. And by frame 2, the necklace is already snapped and the shirt is already up above his chin. And when you just do the math, even allowing for some error or for some whatever, that is crazy fast. Crazy fast. Physics don't lie, right? You would expect, if a 30-06 were to hit him in the neck, you would expect the round to hit his neck, for it to blow straight through, for blood to explode all over the place, massive cavitation event like you see with the ballistics dummies. Not exactly, obviously. And then that outwards blast should cause the shirt to expand away from him and then, smash back into him or something like that. Presumably. That's just me thinking it through. But instead what we get is in frame 1 of impact, already you can see right here the shirt is starting to move up, and already the necklace is moving up at drastic speeds. It's so blurred right here, you can't even see where it goes. It's not even in the camera shot. And then by frame 2, the necklace is already snapped and back here, and the shirt is already up in front of his neck by frame 2 at 60 frames per second. So that's 1/30th of a second. That's the piece that actually has me considering this theory quite seriously. And obviously there's a lot of pieces that still need to get fit into place, but physics don't lie. And you can see that same speed of how the shirt responds in all of the videos. And for the astute tinfoil wearers out there, I think that's probably a big part of what had them on the exploding microphone theory from the start.
Charge where they have to create the standoff space. So combined with the odd angle that the microphone was kind of mounted on him, it wasn't mounted flat against his body. It was kind of like stood on its side. And then
I'm going to rewind a little bit so we can get this piece
everywhere.
from the start.
You know, like a rocket engine. When you launch a rocket engine, it just doesn't explode everywhere. It sends a directed path in one direction, and that causes a trajectory, and it follows that trajectory quickly.
So that would mean in this case, equal and opposite reaction. That would mean that the shape charge would have had to have been pointed down and away from him, correct? To push everything up towards him?
Right. And so the variable comes in is the primer charge, where they have to create the standoff space. So combined with the odd angle that the microphone was kind of mounted on him, it wasn't mounted flat against his body. It was kind of like stood on its side. And then the standoff charge, which it's my belief that they anticipated the mic to be flat on his body. And the standoff charge was made to raise the microphone directly away from his body before the primary shape charge went off. But because the microphone was kind of mounted on its side, when the standoff charge went off, it lifted it up. So then it changed the trajectory. When the shape charge went off, it basically created like a rocket engine that caused it to travel across his chest instead of it directing the charge directly into his chest. And a shape charge is 90% efficient, more than 90% efficient of directing the energy to one direction. So the whole equal and opposite, it doesn't really apply because we're sending less than a gram of metal cone in a high-speed jet into the flesh. So it's not like a bullet or a traditional ballistic where you're sending a heavy object in the opposite direction.
How would this?
I would love to see Nate dissect this idea. I would love to see especially Zeb Boykin dissect this idea. I would love to see Chris Martenson apply his intellect to this idea. I would love to see the shills try to debunk this idea with serious math and analysis.
This microphone exploded with enough force to kill someone. So do you think that this has enough charge to cause all the reaction that we saw in that small of a package?
It's because it's concentrating. It's like a water jet where you're basically taking all that energy in that charge and you're directing it to a very small stream. And because it's you're creating an acceleration because you're forcing this expansive force down a very small cone.
Is it hard to reproduce? Not if you're an explosives expert. I don't have the fucking expertise to reproduce it. And even most people that are expert marksmen with a rifle, most of them would probably not have the skills to reproduce it. Valhalla might have some experience with explosives. I don't know. I'm not sure. But you would need a very specific type of person to reproduce this safely.
It reaches.
This guy, I don't believe, is an explosives expert. He's expanding beyond his regular expertise. He's an expert in body armor. And he helps repair and design body armor and stuff like that in his current career.
Mach 7. So anything it contacts, it basically turns it to liquid. And so it's deep penetrating. That's why they use
Dan
it
Flood would be familiar with it.
To defeat tank armor and things like that. But with soft tissue, it's even more devastating because there's not as much resistance. So it would create a deep channel just like a 30-06 impact, but it would do it with a minimum amount of charge, less than 2 grams.
So this is one of the pagers from Lebanon.
Yeah, and that in particular is the walkie-talkie.
See, he can recognize the photo right off because he's looked through not all of, but a huge amount of evidence from the pager attacks. That's how you note someone's expertise in a particular topic, is when they're familiar with the source evidence.
Okay. So now I'm just bringing this up because with Candace Owens kind of dropped that bomb in one of her videos saying that there's the little black specks on the floor inside of her car. Have you seen that yet?
Yeah.
So the car that Charlie was in, and they're saying that might be from, people are implying that might be from the explosion, like pieces of the pager, or in this case of the audio, that exploded, and these little tiny pieces they're seeing in the car were from that. What do you think about that?
I believe.
Yeah, I'm actually the one that sent her the message about that.
Yep. Stick says you can see the lower right side of Charlie's neck looks like it is being pushed up by something. Correct. And he comments on that too.
The type of plastic that you
I don't think they made sure his shirt was tucked in. Do you mean when they carried him out? I don't know, but I do think that it's very likely that when they were rendering aid, what they were actually doing was cleaning up pieces of this operation. If this is what happened, then that's definitely what they were doing. Hard to say for sure, but that makes me wonder about the Y-Refi guy that was just incidentally over top of Charlie for the moment. I wonder what he saw. Because I can't imagine you're going to tell the fat fucking Y-Refi representative about your assassination plot, right? The dude smiling, Rick Cutler, he would be in on it. if this happened, that's the kind of guy that would know. But the other guy that was standing over the top in the dark shirt, I wonder what he saw. And in the heat of the moment, with bodies kind of over top of him, there would have been blood, like there was shit going on. That kind of person might not even realize what they did see. And it wasn't actually a handoff. When Rick pointed back, or maybe it might have been Brian that pointed back, and the Y-Refi guy's hand kind of touched his hand. When you look at that in HD and you analyze it, they don't exchange anything between their hands. He's pointing, and the guy in the dark shirt at first thinks that he's taking something from his hand, so he like reaches out to touch his hand. Then he realizes he's being directed to go to the car, and he runs and turns around and goes to the car.
You see in the floorboard too would match the plastic you could expect from that device. So you have flat black plastic, and then you have glossy plastic. The glossy plastic is the actual...
Yeah, they were crapping, and they surrounded him so you couldn't see his chest. Kind of seems that way.
Face of the case, which the battery is right behind that O there. So that immediate charge would basically shatter that into, a million little pieces like glass. And then the primary charge would further...
And then those little pieces would be stuck in Charlie's shirt. And in the car, if this is what happened, the first thing you'd be doing is taking his shirt off and examining the injuries and figuring out what the fuck went wrong and what you're going to need to do about it when you get to the hospital, taking away any evidence. And so that would explain why the shards would get all over the van and you wouldn't be able to clean them up, and you'd have to get rid of that fucking car because those shards would just be everywhere.
They break the inner core of the device, which you showed earlier when the battery was kind of popped out of the device. It's all flat black on the inside of it. And how thin that plastic is, when it would break, it would just shatter into small little pieces like that from the high pressure wave of the explosive. Like I said, it's a Mach 7, jet that's going to be coming out of that device. It's just going to completely wreck anything. And it's not a hot explosion. It can reach, 500 degrees, but it does so in such a quick time that it doesn't really get time to transfer away. That's why it doesn't like burn things or leave burns even on the victim. It would leave a wound that looked a lot like a rifle impact.
Did you hear that? Is it that these shape charges apparently can happen so fast that they don't actually leave burns? They just penetrate directly.
So it's a quick release of energy, not a hot explosion.
Yeah, the quickness of it is the real key factor. It's an extremely quick burning and clean burning explosive.
Damn, Stacy in the house. Thank you, Stacy. That's how you know Stacy's woken up, because she comes in and drops the sub on the chat. Everybody say thanks to Stacy if you just got one of those 25 subs.
And that kind of explains the high energy that we see, how fast it dissipates, from the shirt. It causes a huge reaction, but then it goes away really fast.
And just real quick, just to get this out of the way, do you think that there's any chance Charlie's still alive?
If he's still alive, he's the greatest actor that's ever lived. I mean, he nailed the physical reaction of the midbrain and brainstem damage, and the way he hit the ground. I have videos of him hitting the ground slow motion. It was devastating. I mean, his head bounced off the ground. He was absolutely limp. I'm a firm believer that his heart was almost stopped before he even hit the ground.
Well, and I know that Charles McClintock says he has an image where his neck is destroyed, based on the way his head tangled.
I mean, I wonder if there's a world in which this charge shot upwards through his neck into his brain. Like, we still don't have an explanation for brainstem injury with any of the theories, including the mainstream one, right? But if it's down here and it's shooting up at him, and there is a chest wound underneath there that we just didn't see blood come out of initially, I mean, maybe you could make the argument that it went up through his neck into his brain. Electrocution solves the brainstem injury. It does. And honestly, if I were planning this kind of this kind of complex assassination, I would want two methods of killing. I would want a backup strategy, like electrocution. That being said, I think these guys make a convincing argument against electrocution, but I'd be curious for your guys' opinion.
So that, I mean, I know a lot of people want hope that he's still alive, but I'm not sure.
Electricity is the trigger. I think it's very possible.
The necklace has something in it, like PET or something in the necklace itself.
Yeah, I've actually thought about that. The cross, the pendant itself, possibly having, but
yeah, C6 to C2 damage, but in the opposite order that we've been told, could be, and it would help explain the cavitation, right? Because there does appear to be cavitation in the neck.
Seeing it peek out of the shirt, still kind of intact, made me kind of leave that. And these are energetic means to, it'd be a lot more difficult to place an explosive independent of a cross and have a means to trigger it than it would be in the...
Explains why Dan Flood pushes Charlie off the chair a little bit. I mean, you'd want to push him off the chair in any of these scenarios, including a shooter. So it's kind of nothing. But yeah.
The in the microphone. The microphone is just the most convenient thing to target with explosives because you have all the electronics, you have the battery, it's going to be on his chest. Literally.
There's a video showing entrance wound spray from behind his ear on his right side. I think he was shot from one of the balconies to his right. That video is deceptive because it's low frame rate and bad quality. And when you see similar angles from higher quality, you learn that what that is it's a blurred image of this piece of the necklace right here flying off and around the back. It's not actually blood spray. It's this movement right here from the necklace doing that. And in those angles, it makes it look like splatter, but it's not splatter. It's the necklace. And I've seen that from a number of different angles in very high quality footage. And I feel pretty confident. I mean, in all of the high quality angles from this very back angle, you can see there's no blood splatter. There's no entrance wound that's visible. There's nothing of the sort on his back right side. I thought that at first too. That was something that Range Day Bro brought up in his first big video. But I don't think so.
Really against his chest. It's just really, really convenient. And he doesn't have it most of the time. His cross he's wearing, all the time. It would just be a lot more difficult to get access to the cross to plant the explosive in it.
Now, this is a very common one.
It's a good point that it would be very difficult to get access to the cross to plant an explosive in the cross.
We're asking, well, if an explosion went off under a shirt, how come it didn't tear or mark his shirt? Why is there no explosion marks? Why is there no tears that are obvious? If there was enough force to kill him, then why wouldn't it have left some kind of marking or tearing?
And that's a very valid question. And it comes down to the use of the shape charge. They're made to be very efficient in directing that energy in one direction. So it's like having, like I said before, a rocket engine where you have a lot of propellant, you have a lot of energy, but there's only one path for it to escape. And that path is through a very directed metal cone. And as that explosion expands, it's slowly releasing out of that metal cone and creating a really high-speed jet that penetrates into the flesh. So it's not like a ballistic, launch of a bullet where you have, the force of the bullet, causing an equal and opposite force, or like a traditional explosion where you have a radial force expanding everywhere. It's a very controlled explosion.
All right, now let me ask you this. Because of the new images that are coming out supposedly, and Baron saying that he saw burn under his nipple on the right side, kind of down by his rib, could that be explained from the jet, from the shape charge burning just that area as it was going off?
I would say it's probably more from the primer charge, where they had to have a primary, kind of like a priming explosive to create the space they needed between the device and his flesh for the shape charge to do its work. The shape charge is just going to leave a very, small, round, very clean hole.
Yeah, I think like a claymore charge pointed in a specific direction.
Like the Israel.
How does Baron know about that nipple burn? He has a photo that other people don't have.
Israeli attacks with the Mossad attacks with the pager, they were designed to send shrapnel to their face with someone holding the device in their hands. So there's not a direct analog, even though they used the same type of explosive hidden in a battery. They weren't designed to explode right on the person's body, or like a shape charge, which would be if you send them away from the body. They were designed for someone to push a button, looking at the pager, and send shrapnel at their face, basically. So that's why we see the differences of from a traditional explosive. It's not something that
I don't know as I'm like a modern Batman, guys. I ain't got no Bruce Wayne side. I'm just me. But I appreciate the hype.
We're accustomed to seeing. You can look at examples of armor penetrating shape.
03XX boot, you've made fucking shape charges? Who are you, dog? Works to blow very specific holes in things when you're in the Marine Corps? Shit, dog. So, boot, in the sake of trust me broing you, and trusting your Marine Corps time, how does this sound to you? Give it like a 0 to 100% plausibility rating, Mr. Marine Corps. Based on what you know of shape charges, let the chat know if you think 0 to 100% possibility. It's like, maybe. Not a chance. Can we visit direct energy weapon possibility? Yeah, but it wouldn't be anything like any direct energy weapon that we know about. Sounds extremely plausible to you. Okay, that's interesting to know. It sounds like we should get some people that work with shape charges to start talking on the record. 92 to 94% says another Trust Me Bro in the chat. I mean, they just did the pagers, right? So
charges and kind of see how cleanly they make
and that's why I didn't initially give it much weight, because I don't have any expertise in explosives, obviously, and I don't really know much of anything about shape charges. So I just immediately thought about regular explosions and was like, dude, it's not an exploding microphone because I don't see an explosion. And so once you start to get more expert analyses, it's like, oh, that actually does make a lot of fucking sense.
The holes and how they don't even have to put a backing on it. They just set it on the metal, right? And it makes a big giant hole. And
a lot of people don't realize too that it's used on a much larger scale. They use it in war.
Yeah,
I mean, they use shape charges to blow through tanks and stuff like that. So the technology is just miniaturized for this use case.
Yeah, and it's very quiet too. It sounds like a firework. So that's the other thing about the.
You watched a video posted in summer, and charge wound was compared to a 30-06 wound before September. What?
Rifle, it's like you wouldn't need a lot of sound to kind of muffle it and make it where people wouldn't notice that there was an explosion, right on his person. It just, any sort of distraction would make it easy for people to overlook it.
So what are your thoughts on the sound itself? So a lot of audio engineers and audio forensics people are saying that there was a crack thump that was consistent with a high power rifle and all those things. So what are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely think that there was a 30-06 shot that day. I think there was a supersonic crack. All that definitely happened, but I think it was more of a ruse to provide cover for the explosion and also to tie the assassination to the patsy. The area that it happened in is so tricky because there's a corridor, there's concrete walls on both sides, like large flat concrete walls, and then we're dealing with audio from cell phones, which are, they clip. There's a lot of challenges, and the biggest thing I have a problem with is that the rifle sound came through the PA system. If you look at the videos, all the videos that the cameras can see the PA speakers, the rifle sound is so much louder than the videos where the cameras aren't in direct sight of the speakers.
Okay, wait, say that again.
The rifle sound was played through the PA speakers. So the speakers that were playing Charlie's voice and the person that he was.
Here, we're going to come back to what he's saying about the speakers.
3, 2, 1.
Oh my God.
That was a loud shape charge.
Yes! We did it! Look how clean that is.
That was very loud. I'm going to have to watch through this and get an analysis of what type of charge they're using.
Good day. That is much different than I was expecting.
Look how shiny it is.
Yeah.
That's the crystalline structure of raw tungsten. Well, I'm glad it did something. I think we're going to break it. This is going to go away today.
So they're shooting holes straight through tungsten cubes with shape charges. And they're doing it in slow motion.
Conical is so much brighter. It's like
obviously this is a different kind of charge than we're
Yeah.
talking about.
All right there is the hot.
But I'll have to do some digging into shape charges now.
All the videos that the cameras can see the PA speakers, the rifle sound is so much louder than the videos where the cameras aren't in direct sight of the speakers.
Okay, wait, say that again.
The rifle sound was played through the PA speakers. So the speakers that were playing Charlie's voice and the person that he was taking questions from, the rifle sound was without a doubt played through those speakers. Now whether that's Charlie's microphone picked it up or some other means, but you can't deny that the videos that are close to the speakers, their rifle sound is much louder than the videos of where the camera's not in direct sight of the speakers.
So people asking about, what about obviously the electrocution theory and or a taser? Would that explain what you're seeing with the body reaction?
With one hand, but the hand that's not holding, like that picture I showed you where his fingers are almost like crossed and his knees coming together. If you've ever been electrocuted, it affects where the electricity's flowing. So his hand that's holding the microphone, which I'm using the exact same mic that Charlie used that day, by the way.
58. Yeah.
Yes, sir. It would definitely grasp. He would grasp and hold that microphone from that electricity, but that current would be traveling through his arm, through the chair, down to the ground. And that's the other problem, is that he's sitting on a chair that has a plastic seat, and he's sitting on like a memory foam cushion, and then he's on a platform that has a composite top and aluminum frame. So like the path of conductivity is not very good either. Can it happen? Absolutely. I was shocked. When I first heard it, I was very dismissive. But when I researched, people get shocked by these microphones all the time.
Yep.
Because there's three prongs. One prong's a grounding prong, and if it's hooked to a PA system that's not grounded properly, anything that's amplified on that PA system can send that voltage through you, and it takes a lot less voltage to kill you than I ever imagined. So it absolutely is possible. It absolutely could happen. But I don't think his physical reactions necessarily match that. And then there's too many other unexplained things, like what caused the necklace to fly off his head, what caused the shirt to balloon around, what caused the neck wound. It would be like an unnecessary addition to an already complicated assassination attempt.
So one of the tough things about the shape charge videos is that a lot of the shape charge videos, because shape charges, because shape charges get used to blow holes in tanks, a lot of the shape charge videos are using super high power shape charges, the kind of things you would use to blow through a tank. Or they're like just exploding entire model heads with shape charges just because it looks badass. So I don't know as we're going to ever find yet a example of a shape charge of the specificity that we're talking about. But there are a couple of shape charge videos out there, and there's one in particular that we're about to watch. Actually, we'll just do it right now.
Shape charge, an explosive in which the energy is focused.
And this isn't a real shape
direction.
charge. It's just a visualization.
A shape charge is used when a barrier needs to be breached with a limited amount of explosive. There are many types of shape charges. Here we'll show a common type. First, there is the casing, which will contain the explosive. Next, the housing, which will contain the detonator. Now, the metal liner. The liner material and shape is the most important part of a shape charge. We'll see why shortly. The liner used in this example is made of copper. Next is
hence how you get copper into the wound.
The main explosive itself, followed by the booster explosive. Finally, the detonator is added. An electrical charge is used to trigger the detonator.
An electrical charge is used to trigger the detonator.
The detonator causes the booster to explode with enough force to cause the less sensitive main explosive to explode. As the shock front travels through the main explosive, it squeezes the liner into a thin jet, which is then expelled at very high speed away from the explosive. Without melting, the kinetic energy alone of the liner is now able to cut through a thick barrier at a
Does that make sense?
Explode with enough force to cause the less sensitive.
So it actually melts the liner?
As the shock front
shoots
travels
the liner
through the main
through
explosive,
the hole?
It squeezes the liner into a thin jet, which is then expelled at very high speed away from the explosive. Without melting, the kinetic energy alone of the liner is now able to cut through a thick barrier at a precise location.
Interesting. Interesting. Not the type of explosions that most of us were familiar with.
It was done nefariously, you know, and then he's holding the microphone on and off. Like, what would trigger it all of a sudden to start electrocuting them? Usually there's something that causes it, like someone hugs someone that's wet, or they drop it in water, or, you know, they pick it up for the first time. Like, there has to be a variable that changes for it to all of a sudden start to electrocute you.
I think some people are saying like nefarious reasons, right? Like someone flipped the switch that took away the ground, right? That's kind of what I think that theory is based on.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely doable. It wouldn't take a lot, but it doesn't explain everything we saw.
Yeah, I agree. So that he's on some kind of either carpet or industrial rubber or like tough coat, and those are all designed to be non-conductive. Yeah. But so if you get a chance after this, go check out.
You use plastic caps from javelin missiles, you believe, to make the shape, then used a small disc of copper on top of the C4. Interesting. So you were like making jerry-rigged shape charges in the military? That's pretty neat.
Got my video on electrocution, the one where it's the blue thumbnail, but I spent like 50 minutes talking about all the different ways he could have been electrocuted besides the microphone itself. Yeah. But one thing that I want to point out too is you're talking about the way his both hands came up, but it was only in his left hand. And typically
I think if you are playing out this theory and you know, that's the thing is that, yeah, it was fun. You sound like a homie. Yeah. So when you play a theory out, you have to, it's not that you're saying, I believe the theory is true. You're saying that in order to understand the implications of the theory, you have to work within the sandbox that the theory implies. And this theory obviously implies Israeli military intelligence or some military intelligence, right? It implies high-level professional operation. And so if you're in a high-level professional operation like that, you're not going to 0311, you made that name as a joke? Yeah. So if you're in a high-level military operation, you're not going to rely on Brian Harple hitting the button at the exact right time to like match with a gunshot that's off somewhere to be a distraction and to draw attention to the shooter on the roof. That's going to be either radio, electronically, that's going to be timed in some high-tech way, right? And so maybe it's the electrical charge of an electrocution setting off the charge. Maybe it's some sort of electrical timing mechanism that's setting off everything at once. I would assume in this instance that the rifle is rigged with something to have it timed to the same signal. So I would assume that it wouldn't actually be a person pulling the trigger on whatever rifle was fired, if you're playing out that theory, right? That's my best read of the situation. I'd be curious what you guys think.
You're electrocuted, that hand would grip on, the other one would still be free to move, and he'd probably be trying to rip it out of his hand and stuff like that.
And yeah, we might have some choice words about Nicki Minaj later.
The other thing is, and this was pointed out by Elgeist, but he had his hands down in his lap with both hands on it when it started, right? So he would have probably stayed in that position and gotten shocked in both hands and been locked in that position, right?
So this is interesting questioning of the electrocution theory, is that when Charlie's hit, his hands are in his lap, and then he comes up into this position sort of, which is interesting. Doesn't exactly align with the electrocution theory, but I don't know. I'm no electrical engineer.
So the fact that he let go with one hand and had it in his other hand and was moving and stuff freely, kind of, I don't want to say it like completely debunks it, but it doesn't look good for that theory.
Yeah, it doesn't look like electrocution to me. I would say that from analyzing all the videos, there's definitely been a few videos that I'm very suspect of. The metadata doesn't match. They're made like 10, 12 days after the event, and then they're just so highly compressed. And it's so easy to...
It's possible that what they just said about the electrocution, right, is that it could be a neuro response. So it's like, yeah, maybe both hands aren't on the microphone, but maybe the electrocution is causing a neurological response that causes decorticate posturing and causes the clenching in both hands. So I would be curious for some experts to kind of talk that through a little more, because I could see it going either way, being not an expert at all.
To modify videos nowadays.
Yeah, severe brain trauma injury.
What I look for is consistency between angles. I know the first few angles that came out so fast after the event that there's very little time for anyone to fake them, and they all happen to be very consistent from frame to frame. You don't see anything unique frame to frame in those videos.
I agree with that analysis of the early videos that came out.
Than you see in any of the other originals. So whenever I see a video that has even a unique frame, I'm always very suspect of it.
Another thing too that Jason Goodman pointed out, I know people have a lot of different feelings about his theory and that kind of stuff. But one thing he was pointing out early on was that there was like 15, I think was it 15 or 10 frame per second videos that were released, which that is not normal frame rate for any device I've ever seen in my entire life. So obviously,
one thing I really like about Jason Goodman, other than his temper, is that he's very experienced in audiovisual engineering and in cameras and lenses. And so Jason has really high level analysis of video frames and frame rates and all the rest of it. So I do appreciate his expertise on that a lot.
It's been manipulated in some kind of way.
Yeah, and if you've ever done any work with AI engine, it wants to do less frames. It'll do whatever it can to cheat.
Really
It'll double frames. It'll do it's very lazy in its processing. And to do 30 frames a second is a lot of work. So if it can cheat a little bit and do 10 frames, then it will. The sound would be very quiet and very directed. So only the people that were really close to Charlie would even be able to really perceive it. It would be no louder than an M80 firecracker.
Do we remember if there were any eyewitness reports of two different sounds? I don't exactly remember. I kind of feel like there were some eyewitness reports that at the time referred to sort of two different sounds. Right? Yeah, Brian Harple, right? Didn't Brian Harple say that? Yeah, the girl on the roof said 2 shots. Maybe the goth girls are fucking dropping heat, dude. Maybe the goth girls have been dropping the heat all along. Maybe the secret to cracking the case has been with the fucking goth girls from square one, dog. Yeah, didn't Harpoon say it? I'm pretty sure that Harple describes something of that variety as well at some point. And obviously, I don't trust witness reporting that much either. But it's just an interesting data point, right? It's an interesting data point. Because then you would have the sound of the rifle, boom, and you would have this crack of the shape charge that would be almost simultaneous, but depending where you were in the crowd, they would hit you at slightly different times probably. Yeah, Harple said he heard the bullet enter his neck, right? Which is, obviously, he didn't hear that. So, right, are we hearing the testimonies reflecting a failure to understand these two different audio signatures? Could be. Not super strong evidence, but just an interesting data point.
And I think that's where the key of the rifle shot kind of comes into play, too. Put in my mind as, the would-be assassin planning this, the rifle shot not only provides a tie to the patsy, so you can have your fall guy, but it also provides perfect cover for the explosion.
And can you ask
So that also lends evidence to Candace reporting that all the videos that showed the person running on the roof had really weird chains of custody. That all the videos that were organic crowd videos of the guy on the roof running away and the video from before when he came and laid down to take the shot, but conveniently didn't film him taking the shot. They were all military people that weren't students that had really weird chains of custody onto the internet when Candace tracked those people down. And that would go with that would follow a sort of very intelligence agency tactic of fake organic releasing information that would turn everyone's attention towards the magic trick and away from everything else, right? Right? Look over here, not over there. And the analysis is very accurate that Barron did last night, and these guys touch on a little bit, that when you point everyone up towards this character on the roof and then you release the video of him running away on the roof and then he jumps down and they purposely zoom it in so that you don't see the white car in the parking lot, but you do see the guy running and crossing the street and he goes directly over towards the woods, suddenly it's very like, oh, we're looking in the woods for a rifle, which allegedly we didn't find on the first pass, but who knows? And so it does feel an awful lot like directed attention operations. It really does. And having been to that location in the woods, the place where the rifle was just set down, dropped, is like, yeah, you could come up with a lot of better places to hide the rifle just within throwing distance of that spot. Places where the dogs would have found it if the dogs had found it, but where a regular police recruit probably wouldn't have. I've been to those woods.
I'm sorry, we're having to play the telephone game, okay? But can you ask John if he's comfortable? At one point, we had talked a little bit about the timing of the plant explosion that had happened in Tennessee.
Let's get spicy.
Can you ask him if he's comfortable talking about that or if he's thought any more about that?
Okay, Kelly's asking about the plant explosion in Tennessee and if you're comfortable talking more about that or not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So this was just another one of those things.
So I didn't know about this until Barron talked about it yesterday. I've been really distracted doing other projects behind the scenes, getting Buyer app out. I've had a lot of other stuff on my plate for the last couple weeks here. And I did not know about this fucking plant explosion until last night. So we're about to dig into it together a little bit.
So it's just, there's a certain amount of coincidences you can overlook. But one thing.
Do you think the hands in the casket are also a diversion? I certainly don't think they look like Charlie's hands. They look like wax hands to me.
Start to get like highly weird, it becomes hard to ignore it. So the AES plant in Tennessee, they were actually contracted to make these micro-shaped charges. They process the same explosive that I propose is in this device. They actually make the very device that I propose assassinated Charlie 30 days after the event at UVU.
So listen to this one more time.
Plant. There's a certain amount of coincidences you can overlook, but when things start to get like highly weird, it becomes hard to ignore it. So the AES plant in Tennessee, their defense contractor, they were actually contracted to make these micro-shaped charges. They process the same explosive that I propose is in this device. They actually make the very device that I propose assassinated Charlie.
And then that plant goes big tits up 1 month later. Basically, exactly. She gone. Super gone. Yeah, and it killed everyone. Highly tragic. And you have to assume that, like, in America, these kinds of accidents don't just happen all the time. Maybe like over in Lebanon or Yemen. But in America, that's awfully coincidental. It was the month after, not the month before. And you have to imagine, so play the theory out, right? Every time you're trying to work within a certain theory, you have to remember the constraints of that theory. So in this theory, military operation has an explosive in the mic, has all these other complex setups to kind of drive the narrative, and they're expecting it to be a chest wound, probably. And it just looks like a chest wound. It's a 30-06 to the chest, all very explainable. The wound, the blood, everything links up to that, and it's all good, and you're covered. You've got distractions. You've got a patsy. You've got a rifle. It's all lined up. In the theoretical version, it's all clean and they're done. But then with the accidental discharge of this piece that hits his neck, and then suddenly the narrative is at his neck, not at his chest, you have to pivot to it hit him in the neck. You have to go to neck of steel and oh no, and cover everything up and don't release the autopsy and all this other shit. Then you're like, oh fuck, we need to cover up the evidence of the shape charge immediately. High explosive material is trackable. And then 1 month later, the plant that creates these exact explosives just blows up. Because it would, if you're in that world, in this theory, it would take a little bit of time to devise a covert way to blow up that plant. You couldn't just do it immediately, but you'd want to do it as fast as fucking possible. Which is also why they would repave, because then you would have toxic explosive material in the grass, as well as maybe other shrapnel and other evidence. So, and they auctioned off the car. Yeah. And yeah, that theory would include them murdering all 16 employees that were at the plant that day. The company is literally called Accurate Energetic Systems because they create shaped charges, I presume. That is tragic. As we get into this, we find it even more devastating than we thought initially. Trying to focus as much attention as we can on taking care of their families. I would love if you would investigate malfeasance. It was the weirdest thing ever, she said. So then I'm like, are we in a tornado? Is there, a bomb somewhere? It's one of the only businesses in this area. So it's the only place, one of the only places for employment for locals. Damn. Holy shit. This is Google Maps from the couple months before, from the earlier this year. And then this is aerial footage after the blast. The cars that we saw damaged were all the way down there in that lot. It got blown to tiny little bits. Whoa. That's wild. Yeah, 16 people, and it didn't even get mentioned in the mainstream. Not a trace. Right? Isn't that weird? Not even a mention. It got the Vegas treatment from day one. Nothing to see here. Just an accident. Yeah, we can't help but notice that the roof is not blue. Not a blue roof. Same Sky 5 news footage. Same quotes used. The sheriff said during an earlier briefing that this is a very big investigation. I sure hope so. I hope they investigate it to the fullest. I'm worried that they won't. Cause of the blast is not known. They're combing the incinerated property foot by foot, searching for possible evidence. That's dark. 16 confirmed victims. It happened at 7:45 a.m. Central Time on Friday, October 11th. What caused the explosion? Not yet known. The investigation could take days. I bet it'll take forever. Oh, thank goodness, though. The FBI is on the case. Isn't that reassuring? Thank God the FBI is on the case. Can we get a little bit of fucking online uproar and noise about this explosion and get a proper investigation into this? Can we get someone to ask a few questions about this explosion? Because I think we've got questions. I don't think we trust the FBI with this investigation. They also test explosives on their campus. They've been awarded numerous military contracts, primarily from the U.S. Army and Navy. Is this the contract that Barron was talking about yesterday? I need to go rewatch Barron's stream. Is this the military contract that Barron was tracking? Because Barron brought up a military contract. It is, huh? No shit. No shit. That's wild. Wow. I'm going to have to dig deeper into that. This guy mentions tracking down the plant manager. This part is crazy. If you think that's wild, listen carefully to what John's about to say.
30 days after the event at UVU, the manufacturing plant that makes those micro-shaped charges explodes into a million pieces.
Wait a second. So say that again. So
the manufacturing plant that has a government contract to create these very devices that I'm theorized killed Charlie exploded 30 days after the UVU event.
Almost like a cover-up.
Exactly. So, so I looked into the employees. I saw the victim list. 16 employees died that day.
Hey, dropping the contract number into the chat right there. Freaking legend.
Hey, God bless them. But in the news report, it said the production manager was brand new to the job. So it made me curious about what happened to the old production manager. When did he leave? And so, I don't want to say box the guy or anything, but, he literally left days after the event at the UVU and he doesn't have a new job. I wasn't able to contact him with any numbers I could find. Like, it's very, very odd. Like, he just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. So it's like, you start to get the vibes that something wasn't, quite right there. It's suspicious timing, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, all of that combined, that's definitely a good lead to chase, but that's way too coincidental, I think. The
Lebanon explosions were pagers that were made to detonate to people's faces. I'm on 2% battery, so you're about to lose me. I appreciate the both of you having me on. It's been great.
Yeah, and just real quick on that note, if he's running out of time, and we're hitting 2 hours too, so I will, with your battery dying, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think we've covered all the questions.
Man, they cut out the piece that I'm talking about. If you have any other questions,
feel free.
Holy shit, dude.
Questions here.
To do, it's very lazy in its processing, and to do thing up. So only the people that were really close to Charlie would even be able to really perceive it. It would be no, he's holding the microphone on and off. Like,
what's on that?
I absolutely think that there was a 30-06 shot.
Under a shirt, how come I didn't Terrell Marcus?
The time, it would just be a lot more through those speakers. Now, whether
kind of either carpet or industrial rubber or like tough coat,
the necklace to fly off his head. What?
We wanted Kelly to be able to interact completely too. Harpole.
Than an M80 firecracker. One possess the same explosive that I propose is in this device, the micro-shaped charges.
Almost like a cover-up.
Exactly. So, so I looked into the employees. I saw the victim list, 16.
Okay, this piece right here. We went back to the full fucking piece.
Employees died that day. God bless them. But in the news report, it said the production manager was brand new to the job. So it made me curious about what happened to the old production manager. When did he leave? And so, I don't want to say dox the guy or anything, but he literally left days after the event at the UVU, and he.
Did you hear that? I need to corroborate this for myself. But he just said that in the news report he read, it said that the production manager was new to the job. So he looked into the old production manager, and apparently, allegedly, the old production manager left the job days after the UVU event. So
he doesn't have a new job. I wasn't able to contact him with any numbers I could find. Like, it's very, very odd. Like, he just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. So it's like, you start to get the vibes that something wasn't, quite right there. It's suspicious timing.
I'm going to have to track that down. I'm going to have to try to corroborate that myself.
Say the least.
Yeah, I mean, all of that combined, that's definitely a good lead to chase, but that's way too coincidental, I think.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Let's keep going on with the questions here. We talked about that. Okay, so a lot of people are re-asking this question. So I know a lot of people, like, we're up to like 1,400 people. To anyone that's coming in, we explored the exploding mic theory, and he gets into it pretty in-depth, and he has way more in-depth stuff on X as well. So make sure you check him out. It's John Aaron Bray. I'll put that up here one more time. Right there, John Aaron Bray on X. But basically he's saying that the mic exploded on his chest with a shape charge. That shape charge made it move towards his neck, and something, shrapnel or something from it, or the mic magnet itself, hit his neck. And he wrote a program, or modified a program, that showed that something square-shaped, or, I guess like some kind of polygon, came out with the blood, as though something went into his neck, and then the blood pushed it back out. And that's kind of where he's at, and he thinks that the shot itself did happen, but it was not what necessarily hit him or killed him, correct?
That's correct.
Yep. And then we were talking about some other things that are very coincidental, like this Tennessee plant exploding that happened to make the same type of shape charges that he thinks might have been used in this this assassination. So,
which is quite specific. I mean, very specific.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how common those are. I don't know how many companies make those, but I've never heard of a company that makes them, so I'm sure it's probably not a common thing. All right, let's go on to the next question here. Okay, actually, I have a question. So you mentioned that these shape charges often sound like fireworks. And a lot of people said they heard a firework that day. That's kind of the common theme. Do you think that's related?
What do you think, chat? What do you think? This is potentially the plant where the explosives that killed Charlie were made. Yes, that is the implication. And it is an awfully weird coincidence that this plant exploded just a month after. I'm curious what report bro read. News is going to fuck up searching for new real hard. Yeah. Makes more sense than electrocution, not as technical. I start to question both simultaneously. How did it blow up the cars but not the trees? Debris hitting them, I believe. That'd be my assumption. Check plane data for that area. Oh gosh, you're going to get me going on plane data? Oh goodness gracious. God darn it. You're going to make me do that, chat? Y'all crazy as hell. Asking me to start digging into plane data. Damn it. All right. I'm probably going to have to do it on ADSB. So just a second. We're talking October 11th. So we'll go back to the 10th. And we'll scroll out over here. And we'll go to Tennessee. I'm probably going to do this off stream. Because it's going to take a lot of time. Humphreys County. Humphreys County, Tennessee. In the upper left-turn quadrant. Upper left-turn. Yeah. It's kind of down underneath the notch. So I've pulled it up on ADSB Exchange. I'll track through it. I'll look at it. I doubt we're going to get anything, but we'll look. We will look. Here, let me just pause this real quick so I can do that later. And what we're going to do is just really quickly again play through the timing of the shot, because that is so critical to understanding why it might buck snort Tennessee. I think buck snort might be so small that it doesn't even show up on the map. I'm going to have to do more careful analysis to pinpoint the location and pinpoint potential airstrips around it, because Bucksnort is tiny. But I'm looking at Humphreys County with Waverly and Camden in it. That's Benton County, I guess, technically. Waverly in the middle of it. Flight tracking Ian needs some nerdy glasses, for real. But I just want to really quickly again point out that the reason why explosive is a worthwhile thing to think about is because within the first frame of impact, Charlie's shirt is already moving up and his necklace is already going insane at 60 frames per second. So within 1/60th of a second of impact, the necklace is already fucked and the shirt is already moving upwards towards him. And there's a little bit of stuff going on in his shirt down below that you can see now. It looks like the shirt is getting pulled forwards to accommodate for this is only 2 frames after impact for the shirt being way up in front of his neck. You can see the magnet attached to his lapel mic right there. And then the extreme cavitation event occurs at frame 3. And then decorticate posture sets in right about here. And then he falls over. And it is worth noting that his hand opens up. No? Am I imagining that? No. Decorticate posturing all the way through. But it's on impact, the speed at which the impact affects his shirt and necklace is tremendously important. That's frame 2. Dylan asks a great question. Its hardest part for me is how many people would have been implicated. Honestly, it wouldn't take necessarily more people than the security team. And let's just say that in this industry, you know not to trust security teams. There is sentiment amongst smart folks in this industry that security teams are dangerous. And it's your greatest vulnerability, because who around you has military training and weapons? And often does not know you personally for a long time. They often have dark backstories or just complicated backstories. Michael Jackson had a security team change up a couple times right before he died. He had the same security guy his whole life that was like his father. And then Bill had to retire, and Michael Jackson started shifting through new security teams, and then magically he died. It is. I've worked security. Yes, bingo. And I know good security folks don't want to admit that, because there are great people that work security. I know some of them. But there's a lot of people that work security that come from complex special forces backgrounds and military backgrounds that you just don't know necessarily how to trust that. And they're the ones with weapons around you all the time. They're the ones with the greatest access, and they're the ones in charge of getting you out if something happens, which is exactly what we saw with Charlie. They ignored the paramedics. They rejected the help of paramedics and instead packed like 4 security guys into a vehicle and Frank Turek, but rejected the paramedic team and the bag. That's fucking weird. That's super fucking weird. The biggest indicator is when Terrell Farnsworth said "they" in his selfie video on the rocky knoll. The very fact that Terrell Farnsworth climbed up onto the rocky knoll is fucking weird. Super weird. That is a tall wall for Terrell Farnsworth to climb up onto. That being said, I did look into Terrell Farnsworth's family to try to corroborate the claims of Project Constitution, and I found no evidence of Project Constitution's claims that Terrell Farnsworth is related to everyone else in like the case and Tyler Robinson's lawyer and shit like that. Didn't corroborate that one bit. Maybe I just failed, but I don't think so. Yeah, you climb on everything, but not in this instance. You don't. The rocky knoll, yeah, for real. There is no investigation because there is no dead body. I think there is definitely a dead body. I think that Barron is going to bring forth really interesting evidence that there might have been a plan to do a fake gunshot, which has far-reaching implications. And then that got used as cover, possibly, for an actual assassination. And that is a crazy theory to go down. And at this point, even that makes more sense than a 30-06 to the neck. Way more sense. Way more sense than 30-06 to the neck. And just at the end here, we're just going to go back to Heavy Duty Country and our boy Jesse.
What's up?
And just one more time, we're going to watch them blow concrete to bits. And they got pretty solid setup of 140 yards with a little bit of elevation.
Oh, my Lord.
Nice fucking shot, guy.
Oh, boy.
That's a touchdown.
What about a throat lozenge fashioned from RDX? Hey, dude, at this point. So the thing about the throat lozenge is it wouldn't account for the shirt and the necklace. And the shirt and the necklace is really important to account for. That's actually one of the primary pieces of evidence that we need to account for.
There wasn't supposed
Heavy
to be
Duty
any
Country
steel
is
on
great.
that one.
He's hilarious. And he's a good shot. Boom. Literally obliterates through 2 porks, obliterates a concrete slab, and pushes the other concrete slab off the table. And you're telling me that a neck stopped that?
It exploded.
Yeah. The throat goat, neck of steel theory is very thoroughly debunked at this point. And we're just waiting on all these internet trolls, all these ammunition manufacturers to just go shoot some rounds and put it on video for us. Show us a 30-06 stopping in anything at all. We're waiting. Because literally at this point, yeah, the elastic skin theory for real, Nick. At this point, honestly, at this point, directed energy weapons and like sky lasers seems more plausible than that bullshit. That's the thing about it, is that their theory, their mainstream Fed slop, is so unbelievable that at this point, literally any other theory is more plausible. And the shape charge analysis actually accounts for all of these weird physics events in the shirt and with the necklace that have been huge question marks from day one. From day one. And the bullet, any version of a bullet theory doesn't really account for it in my mind. And yeah, bullets do crazy weird things. Yeah, weird things happen when people get shot. But I don't know how to physically explain any form of bullet of any caliber, which I'm no expert in, but I don't know how to explain any form of bullet causing the shirt to fly up in front of his face. Sorry, reverse camera. To fly up in front of his face in frame 2 of a 60 FPS video. In the way that we saw it. And I was a critic of the exploding microphone theory all along. So that's the thing about evidence, is that when you present evidence, theories have to change. We have some big questions. And all those questions are getting the runaround. They're getting treated like they're ridiculous, though they're very logical. Though all sorts of regular Americans are asking them. Why does Erica Kirk feel so untrustworthy? Why is everyone in your organization lying? Why does the story keep just changing? Why can't you produce the autopsy or the bullet or even the actual murder weapon? Because we still to this day have not seen the actual murder weapon. All we've seen is the New York Post's stock image of a random Mauser that they pulled off the internet, not the murder weapon. We've never seen photos of the trans-engraved bullets. And I suspect that we are honing in on the reason being that it's possible that no bullet was even fired at Charlie. And I think that that's a very compelling piece of this theory. I'm not saying I believe it 100%. I'm not saying that I think it's confirmed. I'm just saying that this theory would lend a lot of evidence to why the bullet is such a fucked up piece of the story and why they keep changing the narrative around the autopsy and why they won't give us any transparency on any piece of that and why they had to control the body so carefully after the shot. Because if there's no bullet and there's no shot and it's all just them trying to cover up an accidental problem with the plan, they're fucked. The whole thing's fucked. It's a lot like JFK. A lot like JFK. Like a lot of people try to like live from the belief that these intelligence agencies are like literally the Illuminati and that they can do no wrong, that they control everything, they spy on everything, they know everything. And that's just not true. They make mistakes all the fucking time. Things go wrong in every operation. There's always trails of breadcrumbs because they're sloppy or they're overconfident or something just goes wrong or it's too big of an operation. And if there's one hallmark of Israeli intelligence specifically, it's operations so large and so insane and so fucked up that they're hard to even believe they're real. You know what I'm talking about? And this one kind of has the same signature, honestly. In a lot of ways, this one has the same signature. And we're seeing a lot of the same little small pieces of evidence that seem to add up to a similar story. And the questions are mounting. The public sentiment is turning. And every single response just makes it seem more suspicious. Response from our own government, response from our own FBI, response from all the officials involved in the case, response from TPUSA and all the people at TPUSA, from Erica Kirk, the wife herself. None of it makes sense. Response from Israel and Israeli officials, Bibi Netanyahu himself. None of it makes sense. Unless you turn to a different theory. And then it starts to make a fuckload of sense. Then it all starts to add up quite well, actually. So that's where we're at. That is the current state of affairs. I think that everybody should share that interview around that we watched about the exploding microphone theory. I think it feels highly compelling enough that we need to be asking questions about it and getting experts involved and getting demolition specialists, people that build shape charges. I want to see some shape charges set off on camera to try to test this theory. But if not, have a Merry Christmas. Love your family. Take good care of your people. Drink some water. Eat some healthy food. Be good to people. Be a good person. And don't get lost in the noise. Don't get lost in the fucking mud and in the political subversion and the hatred. Remember that they try to control your mind and your emotions, but they do it by controlling your emotions and then your mind. So take control of your emotions, take charge of your life, and do good. Okay? Thanks for being here. I'll catch you on the next one. And that's it for today. Peace.
Conspiracy theories are entering a dangerous
Information is the oxygen of the democracy.
There's so much evidence out there that even if less than 1% is true, that would be enough to collapse the current paradigm and change the whole planet.